For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, and welcome back. We are talking with Tasha Chapman all this week from Covenant Theological Seminary. We're talking about Christian education and specifically just how we can teach students in a more effective way. So yesterday we talked about 4 things that Tasha encouraged us on teaching students, and today we're going to be kind of going to the other end of the spectrum and looking at 3 or more things that we should avoid. So Tasha, the question today is, what are 3 of the biggest teaching mistakes that we should avoid when teaching students?
Yeah, great answer. Obviously, this is totally my opinion. The things that give me the most, but the things that also help me the most, because I'm regularly teaching, not just in the classroom, but, in the informal environments of mentor groups and small group Bible studies. And on Sunday mornings, I'm usually with the 2-year-olds as well. So if it doesn't work in all those places, I don't value it. But the first one is very classic, not just our culture, but there are many other cultures in the world that have this major mistake. As soon as we think of that there's got to be teaching involved, then we go to this default mode of to teach is to tell. And therefore we lecture, therefore we communicate information, and that's what we do with most of our time and our energy, both in our preparation and in the actual event. To teach is to tell, and that's actually a lie. I mean, it's just not true. The teaching learning process is very complicated for us humans. We're complicated people and creatures, and in God's good design, most of us do not learn well by just hearing something. It's very hard to engage well just from audio, which of course is the challenge for people listening to the podcast even right now. It's so easy to think, wow, that was a great sermon. And then if you ask me 10 minutes later what it was about, it can be very hard to remember. I mean, we'll actually have to work at it cognitively, even though we were paying attention. So instead of to teach is to tell, if we could just break that and remind ourselves, okay, what I'm actually needing to do is gather people around the topic of focus and help us uncover it, help us solve problems with it, help us engage it and mix it up and take it into pieces and put it back together, right? So we're thinking action verbs instead. We're putting kind of, in a sense, the content of our teaching out in the middle of the group and then having the group interact with it. And to use more of our time thinking that way than in lecture. It's not that there's no place for lecture, but just to get our focus off of this idea of transmitting information. Especially in this day and age, we could be doing a lecture with our youth and they'll have 10 other possible opinions on that topic on their cell phone within 2 taps of a button, right?
That's right.
Because they just Google it, and now they get the world's variety of opinions on the topic and expertises. So we don't want to just transmit information when we're physically together.
And that's helpful. I mean, that's something I'm thinking of just, our large group meetings on a Wednesday night. I knew that typically when I saw the students, they had been sitting in a classroom all day long. They had been receiving information, hearing information, and now it's, 7 o'clock at night, and they're going to start listening to some more information. So of course you'd see, the students kind of glazed over a little bit and say, okay, we need to interact a little bit more. We need to ask some questions. And that's some helpful advice there to just be thinking that to teach is not just to tell, that there is interaction that needs to be involved there.
Right. And so to spend more time thinking, what's the interaction going to be? How do I get other people's mouths open? Because they're going to remember and learn way more about what they say and talk to even each other than about what I say. Is a simple way to think of it. Yeah. So that's my first one. The second one we spoke about in the previous podcast. So I'll just remind listeners that it was just that lack of clear learning objective is a technical term, but that lack of clear goal for that specific event. That sense of, boy, at the end of this event, whatever it is, I hope that the learners will have what? How will we have changed in how we think, how we feel, what we value, what we're doing with our bodies, our skills, just that lack of clear goal. That's an actual challenge for the group to take on. Because to learn means to be challenged. It means to be wrong in a sense. And so having a clear sense of, hey, what's the challenge that either my learners are bringing to the pizza party tonight, or that I'm setting up and helping us, work on tonight at the pizza party. What's the challenge?
Yeah,
that's the second one.
And I know that can go against, some of the kind of stereotypes you hear of youth ministry are just people shooting from the hip and not really planning a whole lot. I do think there's some truth to that, but then it seems like I've been encouraged to see a lot of just intentional youth ministries, and a lot of that is just the literature that's being published lately, of people really giving a lot of thought to youth ministry. And so this is just an important thing to emphasize, that to think through these objectives practically each week, and even would probably be helpful to state those at the beginning of the lesson of, hey students, here's what we're hoping to accomplish tonight. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Then you state them, and then afterwards reiterate them, so that way they can, instead of, okay, what'd y'all talk about tonight, and you're trying to search for an answer, hopefully they'll have something a little bit more tangible that they can relay. So that's some good advice.
Yeah. It's, it's easy to think, hey, our kids are tired, they're overworked, they're stressed in this performance culture. Hey, we really just need to have fun, and my objective is that we'll have fun. But even there, I want to push back, and I want to say, wait a minute, how is fun moving towards Christ? How is that helping them move towards maturity in Christ? And it can be, but we have to think about it carefully. A pizza party can be just as hurtful to a teenager to attend, right? Because what if someone gives them the cold shoulder, or looks at them funny, or they don't feel welcome, or there's so many social challenges that can come into that event. Again, if we're just thinking, oh, everyone's going to show up and therefore they'll have fun, and somehow that's growth, then we're off. So that's one of those big mistakes, and adults make it too. It's not just a thing in teen ministry.
And
to have those clear challenges.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, to just then using the pizza party example, there are all sorts of personalities in a youth group, and so you think of extroverted people, introverted people. A party like that might be just terrifying for the introverted person. And so trying to even think of it in that way, okay, how could this be a fun night for someone who is a little more introverted and might be intimidated coming here tonight? So trying to, think about it through those two perspectives could be helpful.
Absolutely.
And make the night more fruitful.
Right, because just having a small, in tonight, we're all going to work on just hospitality. What is it to help people feel welcome? And so maybe one of the games, quotation marks, at the pizza party is people serving each other pizza and finding out what drink they want and making drinks for each other and things like that. To give it some structure and to deal with the challenge that, in a sense, our learners are actually walking in the door with. So, my third one that I want to name is one that really impacts those of us who are leading any event where we know some teaching learning is supposed to go on, or we feel the expectation of that, is that we can become very fearful that we have to have all the answers. And so just really want to, again, I think our culture is, it's very performance oriented, it's very perfectionistic. And we think the person up front somehow has to be a genius, has to wow us, has to entertain us, all of the above, has to have their hair perfect. We're a visual culture now. So the weight of expectation on us when we're in charge of said pizza party can feel enormous. And that's when I say, you know what? To be a brilliant teacher, you don't need all the answers. You just need to invite people to explore the questions with you. And so I actually have a phrase I use in class which just says, don't be the teacher, be the chief learner in the room. In other words, you're diving into learning just as well. You're eager to participate, engage in the different methods and the different things that the group is doing to learn more. And it's not going to throw you when people have questions that you don't know. You say, oh, great question. Okay, how can we go about finding the answer to that?
Yeah.
And not to feel like you have to be the expert, especially for us in Bible studies. We think, wow, if I'm leading, I have to be the Bible answer person. I have to know it all. And we do. We'll even answer questions we shouldn't be answering. If we could just take that burden off and that expectation and realize, actually, everybody will learn better if I'm the chief learner in the room. And I bring my own enthusiasm for the topic, my own questions to the topic. And then, some good resources and ideas for all of us. We can really get the fear out of it for ourselves, and that helps everybody feel more comfortable to be wrong, to try.
That's really good, and that really goes back to what you were saying yesterday, and really just encouraging people and welcoming people, having an environment where people feel like they can, come and ask questions and learn when they hear, okay, this guy, this girl doesn't have it all figured out. That does kind of create that welcoming environment, and it does hopefully encourage the students to ask more questions and feel free to ask those questions as well.
Right, absolutely. They really need that camaraderie of, hey, this person's human too. And wow, they totally don't know the answer to this question I asked. This is great. I stumped them. And we're all going to go see if we can figure it out this week and come back next week. And that psychological safe place to be limited, to be wrong, to try and fail. We set that up as leaders. We need to model that. And of course, that's modeling the sanctification in our own lives. Not that we're going to share all the dirt on the sins we're struggling with, but we're certainly going to, again, model that God's working on us too. And as a teacher used to say, back in the 70s, I don't know if it's been around since then, but, be patient with me. God isn't done with me yet. Being the chief learner, that's part of our sanctification process. And the Apostle Paul certainly modeled that well for us.
Not to mention the warnings of Scripture that teachers will be judged more harshly.
Absolutely.
So to be cautious before we just say an answer that we're not 100% sure is correct.
Right.
So.
Better to be humble and say, "Woo, that's hard. Let's work on that." Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's very helpful, Tasha. Anything you want to add to any of that?
No, that's probably my top 3 today.
All right.
Ask me tomorrow; there'll be a different set.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tasha.